This episode is brought to you by Gong.io, the number one conversation intelligence platform for sales. Gong helps you achieve revenue success, skyrocket rep performance, and gain critical market intelligence. Get powerful visibility into your customer conversations with Gong. Head over to Gong.io to get started. And Gong is spelled G-O-N-G.
Help yourself let go of the old roles and be a little less hands-on is something that women need to learn how to do. I think in our personal lives and in our professional lives, we think we have to do it all, and we might find ourselves not being as successful if we don't get help along the way.
Welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast, hosted by Bernie Borges. This is the podcast for the modern marketer who wants to hear from their peers in the trenches and the occasional analyst or rockstar influencer sharing strategies and tactics about what's working in modern marketing. Be sure to listen to the end of each episode for Bernie's summary and takeaways so you can plan your next move in your own modern marketing journey.
Hey there, welcome to episode 258 of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. I'm Bernie Borges, CMO Congresso, and your host. Hey, thanks for listening. And my guest on this episode is Tricia Sacchetti, Vice President of Worldwide Marketing at Learning Tree International. Tricia, welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Thank you so much, Bernie. And I'm so excited to have you live and in person, which is an unusual thing for a podcast. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from Dulles Airport here in lovely Herndon. So welcome.
Thank you, Tricia. It is a little bit out of the ordinary for me. And I have to say, it's fantastic to be recording this podcast, actually looking at you from across the table. That is fantastic. So I'm excited about our topic. I reached out to you. My listener never really gets a lot of insight into how I arrange these podcast interviews. I reached out to you because I was interested in really showcasing you as a female marketing leader and really talking about the career path for women in marketing. And so we've prepared some talking points here. So that's the main topic, is I really want to get your background. But first, let's get an introduction to your company, Learning Tree International. Why don't you tell a listener who is Learning Tree International and your role?
Great. Thank you so much. Learning Tree is going through a transformation like most businesses are. The training industry has gone through quite a bit of change, and it doesn't move quite at the pace that it should. So we're trying to address both individual and enterprise training needs from a much more holistic and life cycle approach to learning. So we're excited to be able to bring that to market, and we're in the middle of our own transformation. So it's a good time for me to be talking to you.
And your core offering, because your company's been around, 40 years, right? That's a brand that I think many people are familiar with, is you provide technology training, right?
Correct. So yes, we're in the IT training space, but IT professionals need more than technology training to be successful in their paths. So it's people, process, and technology as a combination, and that's where Learning Tree is expanding its breadth and depth to serve that market.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that intro to Learning Tree International and your role here as VP of Worldwide Marketing. What's that look like? That's a big job.
Well, it's an interesting path of taking and getting there too. IT professionals, I would say, are more predominantly male. So being a female in the IT space and at a leadership position, sitting at the table with those leaders, has been an interesting journey for me. And I will certainly get into more details as we go through this process.
Now, you started your career how many years ago?
I would cap it at 25 plus to not give away any certain discrimination factors.
It's funny. I do that too. 25 plus years. Yeah. Okay. Terrific. So let's talk about, I actually want to talk about your journey. You shared that with me offline. And I think that's a story that I want to share with my listener, because I remember vividly you said you didn't set out to have a career in marketing. So why don't you tell that story, succinctly, but just, share that with the listener.
Yeah, I think I started off with a more interest in the writing side of things and the journalism side of things. And that's what my college career path was. And when I graduated, I certainly tried to practice that craft, but I found it to be not very friendly and welcoming, and a lot more effort than I was going to be successful at. So I tried to figure out a different way that I could use my skills and that my interest in using that writing skill. And I turned to corporate America in the marketing side of things, or I would call it more marketing communications than a strict marketing discipline, because I understand you could go get a degree in marketing and there's a whole other set of things to learn. But I was starting from the communication point of view, and actually used my desktop publishing skills from the college days of running the newspaper to get my foot in the door that way.
Okay. Let's talk about what you're seeing as it relates to the role of women in marketing and sort of the career path. What's some key advice points that I know you want to share with my listener about really guiding women on how to find their way in marketing? So what's the first piece of advice that you'd like to offer?
And I think it's important that you immediately learn who can help you along the way and find those mentors, whether informally or formally. There's plenty of opportunities on LinkedIn if you're brave enough to introduce yourself and look for those people that model what you want to be. And you can obviously see that if they present themselves well, that there's somebody that you should be interested in. But it's as simple as asking people and seeing how you can get there so that you can get your foot in the door and then take your career path in whatever direction you want to. I do think marketing is open enough that you could find different disciplines within marketing that might serve you well. So if you can find a position that exposes you to enough of those opportunities, then you would be able to hone that craft and get that organizational development along the way.
Yeah, I want to come back to the mentor thing because I think it's a really key point. Of course, it's not limited to women, but I think because of our focus on really guiding women in their career journey in marketing. You mentioned LinkedIn as a place to certainly connect with people and find some mentors, that kind of thing. But once you're inside of a company, what kind of advice do you give women to really find the mentors and then what to do with those mentors? How formal should that process be or not?
So I assume that you would start with HR to see if there's a formal training in terms of mentorship and pairing. And if there's not, then you'd be proactive with look around your organization and see which women are successful, or at least that you see have more visibility and opportunities to participate at the leadership level, and then kind of interview them of how did you get there, so that you're engaging them from your I want to learn how to take advantage of all the same opportunities that you had. And so if you obviously appeal to somebody's ego that way, they're likely to be willing to help you. But it's as simple as start with HR. HR could even point you in the direction of who those women models could be. There are things like Lean In Circle, which are specific for women, and some organizations participate in that. We've tried it in Fits and Starts here, and that brings all women together.
And what did you call that?
It's called Lean In Circle, and it's actually a worldwide thing. It's not specific to any organization. It's sort of a
Kind of after the book?
Yeah, sure. So that's another opportunity if that exists in your organization versus HR. The Lean In Circle is driven by employees, and they can use the Lean In Circle website to kind of formulate their community. So that's another good way to be women specific and look for women as your guides.
Okay. And then you also mentioned, I want to come back to this now and unpack a little bit, Tricia, and that is the concept of finding your niche. Right. So what kind of advice do you give to women who are looking to find their niche within marketing? And of course, I say that because marketing has become so segmented with specializations within the marketing profession. So what kind of guidance are you providing women on that?
At this point, I would say you'd be smart to find organizations that don't have as niched of an approach to marketing, that their marketing departments are organized with, maybe they're doing more with less. So you would be given an opportunity to have exposure to a lot more things than you might in an organization that's very formal and putting you in a very specific role. So you do your homework when you're approaching whatever organizations you want to be involved with, of asking very good questions about how their marketing function supports that organization. And that might help you decide that's the type of organization. If you are looking for an open-ended route, that's the kind of department you should join versus something that's much more role specific, which you could start there, but it might be hard to move and get into other disciplines of that if they're that structured.
So I think I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm hearing you correctly, Tricia, that starting out more generalized can then really allow the woman that is early in her career to kind of understand the whole landscape and then kind of understand where she might have a specific interest and a passion within the marketing world, and then potentially explore that when she's ready, but start out first sort of as a generalist.
I think if you don't know, then a generalist is the best option. If you already know that you want to go, for example, on an analytics path, that is always going to be a skill set that you can use in marketing or outside of marketing in any career path, that every organization needs business intelligence. And there's one thing to have data and a wealth of it in this current world, but to be able to actually act on it and give good advice on how to interpret it, that's a whole different path. So I think it all depends on if you know your core strengths and you already you want to go that direction, then by all means find a very specific job role. I, however, went the path of open-ended because even though I wanted to use my writing skills, I still was entering the marketing department, and that was going to expose me to a whole wealth of other opportunities, which it did.
Okay. Okay. So I would like for you to share a story that you shared with me, and that is on the question of describe, Tricia, a pivotal situation in your career and how you addressed it. Why was it meaningful to you? Why was it significant? So I'd like to get into that and share that with my listener.
If you're talking about the story about between how to create the collaboration between sales and marketing, then that's an interesting story because I think every organization is dealing with the discipline of sales and the discipline of marketing and how it comes together in the new world. I have a particular phrase that I prefer to use, and it's an uphill battle for me of creating that collaboration. And that's I refuse to call account-based marketing account-based marketing. I use the term account-based engagement because that's what we're all trying to achieve, and it has to be collaborative and cross-functional. As soon as you use the word marketing in the ABM, they assign the responsibility and accountability to marketing, and then it becomes siloed. And so I feel like it's an uphill battle of me trying to force even the vendors who deal with ABM to try to use my terminology. But in order to engage with my organization and sell your services to help us, that's what I'm trying to get done here. And I need your help as a vendor to get there. So if that answers the story and you want to go into any more details, let me know.
Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing you say then, just to really recap that, is that it's pivotal for you, if I understand you, Tricia, because there's a paradigm out there called ABM. And you're saying, wait a second, I'm really not buying into that because it's really about this thing called engagement. And we really need to be collaborating cross-functional. But I do want to unpack that a little bit because it sounds to me like you've got to do some internal selling on that and you've got to get people on the same page with you. And look, anytime that you've got to sort of buck the system, if there's a paradigm out there, which in this context is account-based marketing, ABM. So how are you dealing with that? You're bucking the system.
So if you have to break down silos and internal cultures in order to bring that collaboration together, I think you have to look for creative solutions to that. And so maybe I will be successful in at least internally bringing people together using that engagement strategy. And I think using that term, even engagement strategy, appeals to leaders. It kind of disarms everybody so that it's not sales and it's not marketing. And so using a more comfortable term that is positive, engagement is positive, where marketing that's got a lot of packing and unpacking to do, and sales is its own trouble with feeling like you're being sold to. So if you're being marketed at, you're being sold to versus you're being engaged, doesn't that sound nicer?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I'm sold. I want to come back to an element that is really about that journey for the women in marketing. And there's an element where visibility is important. So what kind of guidance do you want to give women who need to create some visibility? We're all wired differently. Not everyone's an extrovert. Not everyone, wants visibility and exposure. But at some level in marketing, women who are trying to really get into a leadership role like you are, Tricia, need to create some visibility to gain respect and recognition. So what are your words of wisdom on that?
Words of wisdom. Find a project that the organization is trying to launch and offer your help. The more proactive you are in reaching outside of whatever your daily tasks are and giving yourself that visibility that way allows you to grow in ways that might not have ever been offered to you. And that gives you some visibility on highly visible projects. The other way that I would approach this is to, again, talk to other women in the organization and figure out what kind of projects they might need help on so that you're now paired with that woman who's highly visible. So your visibility can go along with someone else's visibility if you're willing to be proactive enough just to ask the question and not be fearful, because there's nobody in any position who won't welcome help.
So kind of the halo effect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be back in a moment with the rest of my conversation with Tricia Sacchetti. Opinions in sales are your worst enemy. Here's why. Your business has million-dollar decisions that if you could answer with facts, you'd have an unfair advantage. Now, some of those questions are, what really separates your best reps from the rest? Why does half of your pipeline slip? And what's the best message to go to market with? Now, if your answers were facts instead of opinions, you'd win the unfair share of your market. It turns out the truth is buried right underneath your nose. It's found in the customer conversations that your team has each and every day. Introducing Gong.io. Gain powerful visibility into your customer conversations. With Gong, you'll win more deals, skyrocket rep success, and gain critical market intelligence that will help you achieve revenue success and win the lion's share of the wealth. Go to gong.io/demo to get started today. Now, you also have a saying that I really like, and I'm going to ask you to share it with my listener, and that is, let's see if I can even pronounce it correctly, stratactical? Stratactical. See, I botched it.
Yeah.
So explain, what do you mean by stratactical?
Well, I think this is particularly important for women. I feel that women feel like they have to do every single task they've ever done, no matter how they get promoted along. So you are still hands-on while you're also trying to lead in a strategical position. So I use the word stratactical because I still, to this day, as a vice president, find myself involved on a day-to-day basis. Maybe even half the day is still executing tactical things and then trying to go to another meeting that's all about strategy. And it's difficult to separate yourselves. And so I feel like the opportunity to really help yourself let go of the old roles and be a little less hands-on is something that women need to learn how to do. I think in our personal lives and in our professional lives, we think we have to do it all. And we might find ourselves not being as successful if we don't get help along the way.
So it's interesting that you say that, Tricia, the whole concept of maybe this mindset of being less hands-on. Are you saying that you're seeing that among women coming up the marketing ranks, that they feel like they need to be less hands-on?
Oh, I don't think women think they need to be less hands-on. I think that without causing any conflict, I think men don't feel the same need to be as hands-on. I do think it's more of a female, how you've been raised, how you have to do your household, how you have to take care of everything in your personal life, that you bring that to work and feel like that's expected of you in your role. So I think it's more of what women think the society expects of us. And once you start doing that in your role, then the organization expects it too.
Your point then is to have a blend of the two, to demonstrate your hands-on skills. You can get stuff done in execution, but also balancing that with your strategic contribution.
Yeah, I think that any organization would benefit from people being able to serve both roles. If you only sit in this lofty space of strategic, that probably isn't going to get you as far as you'd like to be, unless maybe at the CMO level. Maybe I'm more talking about a vice president level than a CMO who should certainly be living more and more in the strategy world than the execution. Their job is to make sure we all have what we need to support whatever the strategy is. So maybe my view is more at a vice president level where I still am very hands-on and also participating in the strategy discussions. And my voice is heard because I do get things done and I can still bring value to those conversations.
Okay. Let's shift gears and talk about culture. Culture, of course, varies from one company to the next. So what advice do you have for women in their marketing career in terms of learning the culture and just kind of dealing with whatever culture they find themselves in?
Well, the irony to that is you are who you are. And if you don't also understand the undercurrent of the culture, you may find yourself very successful with one manager and then switch roles and have a new manager and have conflict. Could be the same organization, but there's something different about that undercurrent, and that is a culture of maybe just that department instead of the whole company culture. So culture is pretty critical if you don't recognize how to step around the minefields. Sometimes you have to wag the dog a lot in order to get things done. Or if you choose to be more assertive, you can also go along the lines of being considered too aggressive, and then you don't get things done either. So if you find yourself in those situations, it's time to pause and really maybe have some offline conversations with people who understand how important culture is and get some advice on how to maneuver.
Okay, that makes sense. And I would think also just getting some advice from internal mentors also on the culture.
Absolutely. I think other mentors versus HR, because HR might not even be aware of the whole culture and undercurrent of things. So your mentors are going to be even more important than trying to go a more official channel.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think it's easier or harder for a woman to build a successful career in marketing as we sit here today in 2019 versus maybe, say, 10 years ago?
I do not think it's harder because I think there's more recognition of having well-rounded voices being heard. I think the opportunity for women to fill roles is very conscientious decision on organizations, recognizing that they're heavier male-based at the leadership level. And so the opportunity to grow quickly is definitely there. I was lucky enough to have mentors along the way that saw the value of assertiveness in my voice. So I chose an assertive path, and that has served me well most of the time. But that also led to the hands-on, show that you can do, and then be promoted along the way. I would have preferred to have more official mentorship than the informal. That's my advice. Seek out both. That the informal and formal ways serve you in different ways.
Okay. Interesting. You remind me of a point that I want to share, not just with you, because I happen to have the good fortune of be sitting across the table from you and literally looking you in the eye when I'm saying this, but I'm saying this also for my listener who is going to be listening to this in the future, because we don't broadcast this thing live, right? We record it and then publish it sometime in the future. And that's the following. And that is that this is episode, I think, 258. And I have not actually run the numbers, but I know that more than 50% of my guests have been men. It is not intentional. I struggle finding women in leadership roles to come on my podcast, and I work hard at it. I chase you down, Tricia, right? The visibility of women in marketing leadership roles, I think, has more to come. Okay. I just think that and I see them. I'm not saying I don't see them. I don't see enough. I want to see more. And that's why I was thrilled to have this conversation with you on this podcast episode.
So maybe I could offer some more advice then to the women who are listening. It feels like maybe we are our own worst enemies in feeling maybe inauthentic to be able to sit at the table. And so our own fears hold us back from asking to be involved more, for seeking the advancement that men are traditionally more comfortable doing. I feel like it's important to recognize that you have value and to self-talk that strength, because maybe you are the one holding yourself back versus anything else.
Interesting. Very interesting thought. And I think that's a great thought to actually segue to the summary. So let's go ahead and do that now. And this is the part, Tricia, where I attempt to summarize the key things that we discussed. And then I'll ask you to add some final commentary, and then we'll bring the episode to a wrap. So we began with a brief introduction to your company, Learning Tree International, a 40-year-old company-ish, been around for several decades. In the training industry, going through your own transformation, you're really providing a holistic approach to IT training, not just technology, but people and process as well. Your role here is Vice President of Worldwide Marketing. And we talked about your career journey and how you started really pursuing a career in journalism. You didn't really find it easy, and you kind of turned to corporate communications as a way to channel your passion and skill for writing. And so really that launched your career in marketing. And so I asked you, what advice do you have? And the first thing you said is to find mentors, plural, not just one. I asked you how, and you said, well, you can certainly look on LinkedIn, but you can also look around your company, start with HR, ask if there's a formal mentor program. And if there isn't, then just look around and identify the women in the company that are successful and start building relationships with them and talk to them and, get their advice and ask them to help you. You also mentioned the lean in circle, and then there's local chapters of that. So that's another potential way that women can get mentoring and also probably a lot of networking as well, I would imagine. And we talked about how finding your marketing discipline, how you advise women that in most cases, if they don't know what they want to do, maybe start out as a generalist and kind of figure things out, get a feel for, an organization that isn't highly siloed and specialized. But if you do know, right out of college, you use the example, if you know you love math and you love analytics, then go for it and just dive right in. It's a highly sought after skill set, whether it's in marketing or not. And then I asked you about a pivotal situation in your own career, and you gave the example of how in the context of discussing account-based marketing, you say, yeah, it's really account-based engagement, not account-based marketing. So it's really about getting people on the same page about the importance of collaborating and being cross-functional so that you're not siloed. And so you really, that's been a pivotal scenario for you because it really requires you to take on a leadership role and, as I said, kind of buck the system a little bit. We talked about the importance of women getting visibility in their career, especially early in their career. You said, find a project, get involved, offer ways that you can help. And then, you can find ways that you can grow that maybe you didn't even know was even possible, or maybe you didn't even know that it was a passion of yours. And then you talked about your made up word, stratactical. I love that. It's a little bit of a tongue twister for me anyway. But you said, women really need to be involved in both strategy, but also execution of the tactical details. And so they need to really demonstrate that they have the capability for both. And I think that can also feed back into the whole visibility thing, right? Because when women are doing that, or especially early in their career, then they can gain that visibility. And then we talked about culture, the importance of understanding the culture within an organization and learning how to navigate that culture so that, you can get things done and not step on toes or not get yourself in trouble, especially if it's unwarranted because of the culture. So the importance of understanding a culture within a company. And then we talked about the opportunity for women in marketing right now is really terrific. It's big because there's been for decades, it's been a very male dominated industry. And I don't have any numbers here in front of me right now. I'm not even sure that they exist. So I don't know how many men are in marketing leadership roles versus women. But we do know that there's definitely a movement, a global movement for women to step into more leadership roles in general. We're talking about marketing, of course, but it's an opportunity that certainly allows women to take advantage of that situation for their own benefit. And then the final thing we discussed was the importance of being authentic. Just recognize the fact that you've got value, you've got something to offer any organization that you work in, and don't be the one holding yourself back. Really be authentic in your approach to your marketing career. So I'll leave my summary there. Is there anything, Tricia, that you would like to add?
I would just add that for anyone looking for a role in marketing, especially women, since that's what we're talking about, to consider putting forth, if you don't have the skills yet and you're starting off your career, what anyone in a leadership role is looking for is people who are enthusiastic, who are willing to go above and beyond, who perhaps put forward skills like project management, the ability to multitask, critical in a department, especially that's resource constrained. So use other keywords to get yourself noticed. You don't have to have necessarily the marketing background, but I'm looking for the right attitude and a willingness to learn.
Terrific. Great advice. Couldn't agree with you more. Tricia, where would you like to send my listener to connect with you online and just learn more about what you're doing in your career and what's going on here at Learning Tree International?
Yeah, I'm on all of the appropriate business to business channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. That's what we primarily support. I'm also on Instagram, so feel free to look me up there. I'm also an actual formal participant in the LinkedIn mentorship group. So if you sign up for those capabilities, you'll likely get matched to me. So I answer people through LinkedIn through that program. So LinkedIn has something more formal that you can join to get advice directly and without having to try to find me.
So that's the LinkedIn mentorship group.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Tricia, we're going to wrap it right here. Thank you so much for hosting me here in Herndon, Virginia, at the beautiful galactic headquarters of Learning Tree International. So, Tricia, thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much. And it's great to see you face to face.
Hey, before you go, does it feel like everything is a priority and everyone's asking for your time and attention? Yeah. Well, here's a free video training that's going to help you manage your time, double your income, and skyrocket your team's success. It's called the Sales Management Matrix. You'll learn exactly how to spend your time for the highest revenue return possible. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, I'm a marketer, not a sales manager. It doesn't matter. Just go to gong.io/matrix and get the free 19-minute video training. You're going to love it. Again, it's gong.io/matrix.
This wraps up another inspiring episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. If you want to share this podcast with a friend, let them know that we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. And we love 5-star reviews. If you are not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. You can read the show notes for each episode at vengresso.com. While you're there, sign up to receive the show notes delivered to your inbox through our weekly alerts. And be sure to also check out our Selling with Social podcast hosted by Vengresso CEO Mario Martinez Jr. Again, you'll find our show notes at vengresso.com. And that's 1 S in Vengresso. Tune in again next week when Bernie Borges brings you another inspiring interview to help you thrive on your modern marketing journey.